Good morning, everybody. I hope you're having a wonderful morning. It's a little dreary and raining here. So thank you very much for joining me this morning. I have honestly missed my weekly Facebook Lives that I was doing before. Miss Wicca, I don't know if you can see her, but there's Miss Wicca saying hello to us. Though I'm really enjoying my new platform, Paula Hoger's Inner Circle. So if you want more info on joining, and I'll do some more info at the end, just send me a message. For those who don't know me, my name is Paula Hoger. My goal is to help you achieve the dog you are dreaming of, whatever that is for you and your family, using practical, easy to implement training. I just had a great call with a new client. She had come home from walking her dog and was close to tears. Luckily, her neighbor saw her and recommended she check us out. She knows she wants to train her dog and has been trying to train her dog, but realizes she has no idea where to start. And I remember being in that exact same position, willing to do the work, willing to spend the time, but really frustrated with the things I learned in classes, not working, or all the books I had. And I can't even imagine that was long before internet, because yes, I'm that old. And I can't imagine the available information now for people. And it's so hard to weed through that to figure out what it is you actually want to teach your dog. I understand now that what you learn in classes is great, but it is all the between stuff that creates a well-behaved dog. Um, I still get clients going, I want to learn. And I'm like, well, what do you want to learn? Well, I want to learn skills, but your dog is losing his mind every time he sees another dog. Skills aren't going to help you with that. It's the self-control work that you practice every day throughout the day that's going to help you with that. Those are the little bits in training. My dog, my first dog, had a great sitting down in the house when I was holding a cookie, but on the street he pulled like a truck, and everything I did not help. He still pulled like a truck, and now I look back and it's so simple to fix. I corrected him, but I really had no idea what I was doing. I didn't even understand what I didn't know. The steps to train to achieve a dog that walked well, that could behave out in public, that was welcome everywhere I went with him. That experience has made me the dog and people trainer I am today. Yukon did eventually become that dog that I could take anywhere, partly due to breed. Being an Akita, they're kind of laid back. So he wasn't that hard to teach to settle down. But in hindsight, I really went about it the wrong way, and I really took a lot longer than I needed to. So I remember that helplessness, and have spent 20 plus years figuring out how to help my clients not experience it. As I go through this live, feel free to ask questions in the comments. I will answer throughout the live, so just ask away. I have my comments set up. If you are listening to the recording, let me know by using hashtag replay in the comments section. And please feel free to ask anything as you watch the playback, as I will regularly check back and answer questions. For those of you on the call, I would love it if you could say hello. And since it is a bleary, yucky, rainy day this morning, I would like to hear about what you do with your dogs on rainy days. Do you go out and walk your dogs on rainy days, or do you have dogs that are like, yeah, you can barely get me out to pee. I'm sorry, it's raining. So what do you do inside with your dog to keep them from driving you nuts? This morning, I grabbed an umbrella in our garage, and it's pretty windy, and it's an umbrella that spent most of its time upside down. So yeah, did not have, I was very, very wet when I got home. I was not a happy woman. My dogs don't care. They're totally happy to walk in the rain. So back to the topic for today. Are you accidentally punishing your dog? I'm going to start with some definitions, and I like to do that because it guarantees that we're all on the same page, that you understand what I mean when I say certain words. So the first word is going to be cues. Cues are one of the ways we communicate with our dog. When a cue works well, you give the dog a cue, for example, sit, and your dog sits on the first cue if he understands the cue. And then we get into regardless of the environment, blah, blah, blah. Not out of fear or intimidation, but because he has been trained to understand and follow the cue. In other words, there is value for the dog performing that action. For a cue to continue to work, it has to be protected. What that means is you don't give the cue and accept non-compliance. So if I say sit, so for an example, I go to the door and I cue to the dog, I say sit. And the dog stands there and looks at me and I say sit a couple more times. And then I finally push his bum down and he sits and I let him out. So in my brain, I'm like, well, he did sit, but did he sit for the cue sit? So you said sit multiple times and your dog stood there and looked at you. The eventual cue that made him sit was your hand on his butt. So he didn't understand. Not only did he not perform the sit, you are now making a new association with the word sit. And that's when I say sit, you stand there and look at me. So you understand how you have to protect the cue. So this is a much bigger topic all on its own, but how I would do if I cue my dog to sit at the door and he doesn't, I'm going to walk away and come back and cue it again. And if he still doesn't, I really have to go, oh, okay, what's missing here? Have I not trained you enough? Are you possibly sore? I have an 11-year-old border collie who sometimes has, when he needs to be adjusted, is definitely slower on sit. So I may not require the sit on going out all the time. He's 11. He's calm. He's just not sitting. So there's a reason why he doesn't sit. But that's what I want you to think about when you give a cue. Okay, so with me so far, you understand what a cue is. So now let's define a correction or a punishment. This is a harder one. I would guess with most people, a correction or a punishment is to teach their dogs what they want the punishment to do is to teach their dogs to never do that again. And if that was how punishments work, that would be great. But unfortunately, that is not how the dog's brain works, or for that matter, how humans' brain work. I see a lot of clients using cues to teach their dog or to try to teach their dog not to do something. What really happens if you give the cue to your dog is you give your dog attention. And here's the kicker. Attention is rewarding. Good attention, bad attention, all attention is rewarding. So giving a cue is adding value to the behavior you are trying to get rid of. And that way you are reinforcing the behavior you're trying to get rid of. And you can see now after that explanation, hopefully, how that can be counterproductive. So let's dig into some examples. One that comes up a lot is counter surfing. Let's start with please, please, please do not feed your dog for getting off the counter. Because I've gone to people's houses and they're like, well, when he gets off the counter, when I say off, I reward it. That quickly becomes, I get on the counter, I get off the counter, I get a cookie. It's called back chaining, and they back chain those behaviors all together. So you're actually teaching your dog to get on the counter. It's the same as giving a cue. Let's look at the problem through my problem solving formula map, MAP. Management. When I have a puppy or a new dog, I want to prevent bad habits from ever getting created. So when I'm in the kitchen cooking, and I do a lot of cooking, they're in a crate or an X-Pen if they're a puppy at the beginning. So that prevents them from ever learning. I go into the kitchen and I jump up next to you to see what's on the counter, and I'm constantly waiting for food. I'm waiting for food to drop. That I have found alone seriously helps the getting on the counter, because the habit, they do go in the kitchen when I'm not in the kitchen, which is fine. But the habit is they check the floor, because if they're going to find anything, it's always on the floor. And I don't give them access to the counter, especially when they're young, unless the counters are spotless, because then they quickly go, oh, I get up here, nothing's happening, I leave. So then I create an alternative. So in this situation, what I do is I teach them to sit on a bed in the kitchen. I actually did a Facebook Live on how I teach staying on the bed in the kitchen in my paid group, Paula Hoger's Inner Circle, but I will give you guys a quick recap. First, I have to tell you a pet peeve. I get calls with amazing regularity with people telling me, my 10-week-old puppy understands to stay out of the kitchen. First, no, he doesn't. 10-week-old puppies have not been around long enough to know anything with any kind of clarity. Secondly, most people teach this by constantly just going, get out of the kitchen, get out of the kitchen, get out of the kitchen, when the dog comes into the kitchen. To me, the most important skill to be building with a 10-week-old puppy is to come into my space, to come on call, to come towards me. All good things happen when you come towards me. If you spend a lot of time telling your dog to go away, that could seriously affect your recall. As much as possible in all my training, I am trying to reward what I want, not correct what I don't want. Our brains, for whatever reason, work in correcting what we do want. Okay, so I'm off my soapbox about that and back to the live. Ideally, my crate is in a location that my dog can see the kitchen. When I cook, when cooking, I regularly walk over and reward my dog for being quietly in his crate. I can use whatever I'm cutting up or just kibble. Right from the beginning, I'm starting to build the behavior of sitting quietly watching me cook. Next, I switch them to the dog bed. When I first switch to a dog bed, I use a tie out. This way, when I am not paying attention and the dog doesn't have an opportunity to leave the bed, because when they leave the bed, I end up having to pay attention to get them back on the bed. So safety note, the tie out is short, just enough so they can get comfortable. Much less opportunity to tangle themselves or possibly injure themselves. I never leave a young dog on a tie out without me being in the room supervising. I sometimes have to be quite creative with my tie outs. Currently, my dog's bed is between two crates, so the tie out's tied to the crate. I have used an eye hook into a baseboard because the day I pull the eye hook out, you'd never know it was there. And the other thing I've used is I get a 25-pound weight that we have, and I tie the tie out to that, and the dog's not going to move that. Because again, the dogs shouldn't be lunging. It's just enough to, when they go to get off, they're like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be on the bed. At first, keep the time the dog is on the bed short and start it when the dog is tired, always setting yourself up for success. It's a great time too to give a frozen Kong or special chewy, something that they're going to go, oh, I get on the bed, I get stuff to chew on, it's all good. And helps them give your dog practice. So that's the last part of the problem solving, that practice of lying quietly and watching you cook, including you dropping things, loading the dishwasher, getting things out of the oven. Last step of the problem solving map is practice. This is a life skill for my dogs, and this is a skill I practice every single day. My puppies, right from the get-go, never get access to the kitchen when I'm in it because they're in a crate. That means I walk into the kitchen, walk over to the bed, tie my dog up, and reward him for being on the bed every single time. When they're before the bed, they go in the crate. Pretty soon, my dog starts running into the bed ahead of me and then I walk over and reward every single time at the beginning, creating the habit of when I walk into the kitchen, you walk onto the bed. When I see the dog rarely even thinking of getting off the bed, that's when I stop using the tie out. They get maybe one or two mistakes, and sometimes I'll even ignore the mistakes. So they get off the bed, they wander into the kitchen, they kind of look at me, I keep doing what I'm doing, and then they wander back on the bed, and I'll acknowledge that, wow, that was a good choice. But if they're doing that multiple times, then they go back on the tie out or back into a crate. If I have to take them by the collar and put them back on their bed, again, one, possibly two, and if it's happened multiple days in a row, then again, back on the bed, back on the tie out, back in the crate for about 2 weeks, and then we try again. So I give them the opportunity to be successful, but I also give them enough freedom to possibly make a mistake. Sometimes one mistake, they're like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be on the bed. That's what gets rewarded. They go back on there and all is good with the world and they get reinforced for that. But sometimes they're like, no, I need to check out what's in the kitchen. With Wicca recently, she hasn't been on a tie out in a while. And I usually just have to stop her once. And she's like, oh yeah, I remember. It smells. If I have meat defrosting on the counter, you see her walk in and she's following her nose. She's not jumped on the counter, but she definitely does forget she's not supposed to be in the kitchen and follow her nose when there's a smell when she walks into the kitchen. So yeah, so you correcting them and taking them back to the bed is still attention and causes all sorts of frustration. So with my previous dog, I did not use a tie out. And if my dog made multiple mistakes, I started to get frustrated. And so did he, because he was coming towards me. And you got to remember to the dog, he may not be coming into the kitchen. He may be coming towards you. And now I'm correcting him mildly. I just took him by the collar and put him back in his bed, but I am still correcting or punishing for coming towards me. That's going to bite me in the butt. And what started happening is when I approached him to take his collar, he would turn and run back to his bed. So, A, that was proving to me he didn't understand not to go into the kitchen. Probably, and that's because he would have stopped going into the kitchen if he actually understood. But B, now I am reinforcing when I approach you, you go the other way, encouraging keep away. That might now bite me in the ass outside. So be really careful. As much as possible, I am trying to use management if the dog makes multiple mistakes, because that isn't telling me the dog is bad. That is telling me the dog doesn't understand what I want him to understand. Wicca is now over a year old and hasn't been on a tie out, feels like forever, but it's probably a month, month and a half, maybe. So it's been recent. She's really settled down after her year. So let's talk about the cue, leave it. Another one of my pet peeves. First, most people don't just say leave it, they say live it and lean in because they're using all that social pressure. This one can become dangerous for a couple of reasons. One is when you push in on a dog that has something in their mouth, like when you drive towards them, it's possible they swallow it. I see a lot of dogs that have played keep away that understand to keep it so you can't take it away. The easiest solution is swallowing. Super dangerous, as I'm sure you can understand. The second is when you push into the dog with something in their mouth. Some dogs maybe you may start to guard. Well, you've cornered me. I've got something in my mouth. I'd like to keep it. I'm going to growl. And instinctively, most of us will back off, rewarding that growl and starting to build guarding behaviors. I see this a lot with dogs walked on leash in town after garbage day. That's where I see the leave it a lot. You are constantly scanning the sidewalks looking for garbage on the road, trying to beat your dog to the garbage. And so is your dog. Head down, pulling on leash, you're holding on for dear life. I see a lot of jerking on the leash and yelling, leave it, which really just makes the dog work harder to get to that whatever. This is a battle you're not going to win. If even once in a blue moon your dog gets to something, that is enough reinforcement to keep them searching. Back to my problem solving formula. MAP, M-A-P. Management, prevent the problem from happening. Alternative, create an alternative behavior. And practice, repeat the alternative behavior until it becomes the new normal. Management, some sort of anti-pulling device. I prefer a head halter, but anything that gets your dog to stop pulling works. Keep the leash short, not tight, but short. Don't give them a pile of leash, and walk with purpose, like you're motoring. You're not like sauntering, la la la, walk. The quicker you go, the less sniffing the dog will do, because if you don't stop walking and he's like, oh, wait, there's a sniff. Oh, we're walking. Oh, wait, there's a sniff. Oh, we're walking. Eventually, he's like, why bother? You're not going to stop. It's when we stop and let them sniff that they start going for more and more sniffs. The alternative behavior. This type of behavior starts because most people let their dog sniff, what I was just saying, and do whatever they want on walks, especially when you get a puppy. It's like a divining rod at the end of the leash. How can your dog possibly understand he can pull towards a tree to sniff, but not towards the half sandwich in the middle of the sidewalk? Because he's learned that on leash, things are available. Changing the whole walk picture may be needed. Teaching your dog to stay beside you in heel position is something I have had to suggest to some clients, because the history of walking was so the history of pulling on walks was so strongly ingrained, you needed to give them a whole new place to focus, and healing means they have to focus more on you. This healing also builds the habit of walking with their head up. Once you build enough reinforcing for walking with their head up, they're no longer looking down, scanning. Most people whose dogs scan the ground pull up. Well, as soon as you pull up, the dog pulls down, because opposition reflex, you pull one way, he pulls the other. As soon as he pulls down, he's going to find stuff to go for. So the more you can keep the leash loose and walk fast, the less you pull up, because be careful, that pulling up is instinctive for us. So the more you walk fast with your leash hand on your body, the more likely your dog will not pull down, therefore he will not be scanning. Practice. This will never work if you do it sometimes. If you truly want your dog to learn to walk well and not hunt for food, you have to commit to working on this every single walk. Possibly finding other ways to provide exercise that your dog needs while you're solving this problem. And a little aside, I haven't done a Facebook Live yet, but I'm planning on doing a Facebook Live on what a decompression walk is and what a proper walk is, and understanding the difference and how you're going to show the difference to your dogs. So, I am not saying a dog should always be walked in such a way that he never gets to sniff. I totally believe dogs should get to be dogs, but we will talk about that in a different live. I regularly get calls of dogs that bark at their owners were disciplined. So you're in your dog's face, doing the finger, and the dog starts barking back. And it's really scary, especially with puppies. Usually it happens around 5 months as they hit adolescence, because where's this going? Is my dog going to snap at me? Is my dog going to charge me? I want to teach my dog and guide him. I do not want to battle. As soon as you battle, you've lost. Even if you win the battle, you've lost the fight, you've lost the war, because that's how your relationship ends up being. It ends up being a battle. You don't want to battle. I have to remind myself of this all the time with my child. If your dog is barking back at you, there's a lot going on and none of it is good. Like people, dogs have a range of personalities. With some dogs, when you get into their face, they're going to back off, they're going to cower, they're going to suppress. But with some dogs, when you get into their face, they are going to argue back. And if pushed hard enough, possibly snap and bite. Even the ones who cower, if pushed hard enough, could eventually be put over the edge of the snap and bite. This is just not helping your dog understand what you want. It is, like I was saying, it is creating a relationship of battling all the time, and is a punishment to your dog. So, um, the dog ends up feeling threatened with you in his space. So when you put pressure on the dog, that is threatening, and the dog's like either backs off or argues back, but he is being threatened and responding to your threat. Why would that dog come when called? If you feel threatening to him, your recall is going to get worse, because coming to you is no longer a safe place. Why would he listen to you when there's no relationship or value? Don't get me wrong. Dogs are going to behave inappropriately. And you want to stop the inappropriate behavior right away, so they don't contribute, they don't continue to build value for it. I totally agree with that. But they are not being bad. They are just making the wrong choices at that time. Who hasn't made a wrong choice at one point or another? You don't want them to feel threatened. You just need to interrupt the behavior so that they don't continue to earn reinforcement. Let me give you an example. Wicca loved to chew her dog beds when she was a little itty baby. So, first stop was management. There was no dog beds in her crate, or she was okay with even the dog beds outside of her crate. She would once in a while chew them, but when she was loose, I was usually nearby supervising. If she started to chew, I would talk to her in a conversational tone. Hey, what are you doing? I might even say no, but it was conversational. It wasn't like, no, leave it. It was just, hey, what are you doing? And that would interrupt the behavior, because she would pause and look at me. Hey, what are you saying? Then she would look at me and make a choice. If she went back to chewing, I would remove her from the situation. So I'd take the bed away, or I'd move her to a new location. I would remove the opportunity to continue to practice that behavior. If she went back to chewing her toy, I did always make sure there was toys on the bed. Then I would praise her. Hey, good girl. What a great choice. She is finally old enough, or making the right choices. There was one little bed that I bought her when she was 4 months old that I was like, oh my God, you're going to look so adorable in this bed. And every time I put it down, she'd chew it within seconds. So I kept taking it away for a month and bringing it back, taking it away. Finally, in the last month, again, she hit a year and she mellowed right out. In the last month, she sleeps in her bed, all curled up in a little ball, just like I was hoping for. But it took that long. And the fact that I kept interrupting the behavior means A, the bed survived, and B, I never allowed the habit of eating the bed to get created. Think of the correction or punishment as a warning track on the highway. You are driving along and you see a deer in the field. Slowly, you start focusing on the deer and your hands start to turn the wheel like this. Whee! All of a sudden, you are jolted by the warning track and you remember that you were actually driving a car, not looking at deer. You correct the steering and continue on your way. The highway doesn't yell at you or try to scare you. You don't feel intimidated or upset. Just a reminder to pay attention to the road. To me, this is the perfect correction to a dog. And it's just a stop that gives them the opportunity to make a different and hopefully better choice. And then if they don't make the better choice, then that's where you come in to prevent them from continuing to make the wrong choice. Last example, puppy biting. What makes us think that a dog understands the words no bite? Remember, attention is rewarding, and keep in mind that puppies bite. They're puppies, and some bite a lot, a lot, a lot. I also want my dog to feel 100% safe when being handled. Biting is definitely one of those behaviors that is also self-rewarding. Self-rewarding behaviors are behaviors that without your input, without you doing anything, the dog will continue to do them because it's fun. Barking can be self-rewarding. That repetitive bark, 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 bark for whatever reason is self-rewarding. Biting you is fun even if you didn't move. Though a lot less fun if you didn't move than if you do move, which I'll continue on with. I am not saying to ignore your dog biting because that won't necessarily work, but because back to biting is self-reinforcing. But your soft skin, because your soft skin is super exciting to chew. But a lot of times the continued biting happens because we react. Reaction is attention. Remember, attention is rewarding and your reaction is attention. But getting into their face and saying no is very likely to get them more excited and to bite harder. Even worse, those who hold the dog's muzzle while glaring into their eyes saying no bite, because I'm going to say no bite and you're going to understand me and stop biting. Now that dog feels unsafe when you handle him because now you've put social pressure and you're right in that dog's face. And still, your dog still bites you. And in fact, a lot of dogs now escalate because they're stressed out when they're close to you. So they bite more because that shows a sign of stress for dogs. Remember my problem solving formula map. Management, alternative, practice. Management depends on the puppy and the stage they're at. I start with always having a rawhide that the puppy can chew when they sit on my lap. I find with a lot of puppies, there reaches a stage when the dog can't control himself and will still bite his people instead of the rawhide. And that's fine. They're telling me this is what I need to do, and I'm taking away the choices. In that situation, I would remove the puppy from my lap and possibly put them on the ground. And if they're still coming at my feet and stuff, then I would put them in a crate or an X pen, removing the opportunity to chew on me. This only lasts for a few weeks if you stop it. If not, I get calls all the time. Oh, my dog attacks me when I sit to watch TV. But I remember one call, the woman kept saying, oh, see, the dog attacks me. So we did a lesson where we sat in her living room watching TV. And after, at first the dog amused itself, but after about 5-10 minutes, the dog started coming over and biting a little bit. And she's like, see, because we like to confirm. See, I'm not crazy. This is what the dog's doing. And the problem was right there, I said, pick up your dog, go put him in his crate. But she didn't. She pushed him away. And then he started to escalate. And the more she said no bite or tried to get him to stop, the more he escalated. If she just picked him up and put him away, he would have never been reinforced for biting her. And that habit would have been much easier to fix. Instead, the dog was 6 months old and they couldn't watch TV because the dog was literally attacking them, launching off the floor right into their faces. So, practice. I am constantly amazed by the amount of clients who show me their arms full of bite marks. This is one of those life skills. Every single night when I sit to watch TV with my puppy, we play the same game. You can do it or you can't. If you can't do it, it's not a big deal. I just put you away. I keep them in the same room with me, but I'm not isolating them, but they don't get to sit on my lap and bite me. And if they bit me like a couple of days in a row, they'll probably get a week of just starting out in the pen with their special chew toy or their frozen Kong so that they get a habit of watching TV calmly lying on their bed. Like I said, this way your puppy, this doesn't last a month. It goes away pretty quick. But if you continue to interact with them, no bite, no bite, stop trying to get them to stop, and the older they get, the harder they bite, the more excited you get, the harder your corrections are, the higher they get. It's that vicious circle. Um, this behavior lasts well into adolescence. Okay, so I want you to think about how you're possibly reinforcing behaviors you're trying to get rid of, or using your cues to change behaviors you don't like saying sit every time your dog jumps. Are you giving your cues in a harsh voice? That's usually a big sign that you're using them as corrections or as punishment when you're using a harsh voice. Yes, cues have to be clear and stand out from regular chatter, but you don't need to say them in a drill sergeant voice. Are you using cues to stop inappropriate behaviors? Look at the problem-solving map. Start with the M, how you can manage your dog so he doesn't keep doing this inappropriate behavior. If you like this style of behavior breakdown, I invite you to join our private community. We have both working and auditor spots available. Are you regularly working with your dog but not getting the results you were hoping for? Have taken some classes, but your dog is still crazy on walks, stealing food, jumping on your kids? This may be the next level of training you need to achieve your goals. We've got an audit level membership where you can get access to the growing library of how-to training videos, watch the deep dive lives, and ask questions that may be featured in our bi-weekly Q&As for only $50 a month. And of course, we have our custom dog training plan level where you get access to everything. You get all your questions answered, get custom dog training videos made for you. Plus, and this is the biggie, members at this level get a monthly consultation with me where we will design a custom 30-day plan based on exactly what you and your dog need to succeed. So you focus on what truly matters to your life with your dog to achieve what you want. Let me know if you want to enroll or need some more information. Just send me a message here or an email at info@dogtraining.ca. I hope to see you on the inside.